My name is Phyllis Armstrong, 63 years old, and last Christmas Day, I stood on my son Patrick's doorstep with armfuls of homemade gifts, watching his cold expression as he blocked the entrance to his home. "You are not our family anymore," he said, his voice hollow with practiced conviction. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of Melanie, my daughter-in-law, her perfectly painted lips curled into a satisfied smirk. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked back to my car. They thought they had won. They had no idea I was about to make one phone call that would change everything in just 5 minutes. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up against family manipulation. Sometimes, the most painful doors that close lead to the most liberating opportunities. The winter wind whistled through the bare branches of the ancient maple trees lining Main Street in Millfield, Maine, our little town where I've spent all my 63 years. Some might call it small or provincial, but to me, it's always been home. I've watched it change over the decades, seen businesses come and go, families grow and disperse, but the heart of our community has remained constant. My bakery Sweet Memories sits at the corner of Main and Elm, the same building where my parents once ran a small general store. The warm glow of lights from its windows has been a beacon for locals and tourists alike for over 20 years now. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla often wafts onto the street, drawing people in like a siren call. It was my dream one that my late husband John supported wholeheartedly when I wanted to transform my baking hobby into a business. John. Even after 5 years, saying his name brings both warmth and an ache to my chest. He was everything good in my life. Steady kind, with a laugh that could fill a room. A master carpenter by trade, he built most of the furniture in our home with his own hands, including the display cases in my bakery. Heart disease took him from us too soon at only 58. The doctors said it was hereditary, unavoidable. That didn't make it any easier. Our son Patrick was devastated when his father died. He was 30 at the time, already established in his marketing career at a tech company in Portland, about an hour's drive from Millfield. Patrick had always been the center of our world, our only child after years of trying. John used to say Patrick got my creativity and his precision, a combination that served him well in his profession. I still remember the day Patrick was born like it was yesterday. John pacing the delivery room, tears streaming down his face when he first held our son. "He's perfect, Phyllis," he had whispered. "Absolutely perfect." And to us, he always was. Patrick grew up in our colonial home on Maple Drive, the one John's father had built and passed down through generations. It's a beautiful old place, with character in every creaking floorboard. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a garden I've tended faithfully for decades. After John died, the house felt too big, too quiet, but I couldn't bear to leave it. Every corner held memories of our life together. Christmas was always special in our home. John would select the perfect tree from Peterson's farm on the edge of town, and Patrick and I would spend an entire day decorating it with ornaments we'd collected over the years, each with its own story. I'd bake my grandmother's special sugar cookies, and we'd sip hot chocolate while listening to old vinyl Christmas records. Even after Patrick grew up and moved out, he always came home for those traditions. Until Melanie entered the picture 3 years ago. She appeared in my bakery one Tuesday morning in October, claiming to be just passing through on her way to Boston. Tall, strikingly beautiful, with long blonde hair and an outfit that seemed too polished for our small town. She ordered a cappuccino and my signature maple pecan scone, then asked detailed questions about the business, the town, and eventually about whether I had family. When I proudly mentioned my son and showed her his picture on the wall behind the counter, her eyes lit up with an interest that should have alarmed me. "He's very handsome," she had said. "Is he single?" I didn't think anything of it then. What mother doesn't enjoy hearing compliments about her child? I told her yes, Patrick was single-focused on his career. She left her number on a napkin, asking me to pass it along to him next time I saw him. I did during our Sunday dinner that weekend. Patrick called her the very next day. Within 2 months, Melanie had coincidentally found a job at a local spa in Portland and moved into Patrick's apartment. Their relationship progressed at a whirlwind pace that left me breathless and, if I'm honest, a little concerned. Patrick had always been cautious in relationships, thoughtful, but with Melanie, it was as if he was under a spell. "She's different, Mom," he told me when I gently suggested they might be moving too fast. "She understands me in a way no one else ever has." I kept my worries to myself after that. John had always advised me to trust Patrick's judgment, and I wanted to honor that. Besides, didn't every mother feel a twinge of jealousy when her son found someone new to love? I told myself that was all it was. The engagement came after just 6 months. The wedding was planned for 4 months later, a lavish affair that seemed at odds with Patrick's usually practical nature. When I expressed surprise at the projected cost, he informed me that they wanted the perfect day. "We only plan to do this once, Mom," he had said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I offered to help with the planning, to bake the cake and provide desserts from the bakery as my gift. Melanie politely declined the planning help, insisting she had a very specific vision. She did accept my offer to pay for the catering, the flowers, and the venue, a historic mansion on the coast that cost more than what John and I had spent on our entire wedding. The wedding day itself was beautiful, if impersonal. Melanie's family was notably absent. She had explained they were estranged and didn't elaborate further. My brother David and his wife came from Arizona, and a few of John's siblings attended, but the majority of the guests were Melanie's friends from various places she'd lived and business associates of Patrick's. I tried to connect with some of Melanie's friends, hoping to learn more about my new daughter-in-law, but they seemed vague about how they knew her or where they had met. When I mentioned this to Patrick during a quiet moment at the reception, he seemed annoyed. "Mom, not everyone has lived in the same town their entire life," he said sharply. "Melanie's traveled, she's experienced the world. That's one of the things I love about her." His words stung, implying my life had been small, provincial. John and I had traveled when we could afford it, but building our business and raising Patrick had been our priorities. I had never felt the need to apologize for our choices until that moment. After the wedding, Patrick and Melanie purchased a large colonial revival home in the most affluent neighborhood of Millfield, a surprising choice since Patrick's job was in Portland. When I asked about the commute, Melanie answered before Patrick could. "We're investing in real estate in up-and-coming areas," she explained. "Besides, Patrick can work remotely most days, and I wanted to be close to family." That warmed my heart initially. Perhaps she truly did want a relationship with me. But as weeks passed, their invitations were sparse, and when I would call to suggest a visit or dinner, there was always some reason why the timing wasn't right. When they did visit me, Melanie would make subtle comments about the house, how quaint it was, how she could just imagine Patrick running around these old rooms as a child, as if it were a museum rather than a home. She would examine my furniture with a critical eye, sometimes suggesting that I should update pieces that John had lovingly crafted with his own hands. I noticed Patrick began to echo her sentiments, pointing out things that needed repair or updating in a way he never had before. "Mom, don't you think it's time to replace Dad's old armchair? It's looking pretty worn." That chair was where John had sat every evening, where he'd read bedtime stories to Patrick, where he'd held my hand during the last months of his illness. The thought of replacing it had never crossed my mind. The visits to my house grew less frequent. Sunday dinners, once a sacred tradition, became monthly, then occasional. Patrick always had an excuse. Work was busy. They had other plans. Melanie wasn't feeling well. Meanwhile, my relationship with the community continued to flourish. Sweet memories. Bakery had become something of a town institution. I knew everyone's favorites, their families, their stories. The high school ordered graduation cakes from me every year. Local businesses came to me for their events. The town's annual harvest festival featured my apple cider donuts as the signature treat. I had friends, good friends like Margaret Wilson, who had been by my side since elementary school. Margaret had become a successful lawyer before retiring, and her pragmatic advice had helped me through some of life's toughest moments, including John's death. Her husband Thomas was equally kind, always ready to help with repairs around the house or bakery that I couldn't manage alone. There was also Robert Jenkins, who had been John's best friend since childhood and was now the president of Millfield Community Bank. After John died, Robert made sure I understood our finances and helped me invest John's life insurance wisely. He often stopped by the bakery for coffee and conversation, a connection to John that I cherished. These relationships sustained me as Patrick drifted further away, his visits and calls becoming increasingly rare and formal. I tried not to take it personally. Adult children have their own lives after all. But there was something about the distance that felt deliberate, orchestrated. And at the center of it all was Melanie with her perfect smile and eyes that never quite matched it. I missed my son. I missed the young man who used to call me just to share a joke or ask for my opinion on a project. I missed the way his face lit up when he talked about things he was passionate about. That light seemed dimmer now, controlled somehow. As the months passed, I held on to hope that things would improve, that whatever phase this was would pass, and Patrick would find his way back to the warm, loving relationship we had always shared. But as his first wedding anniversary approached, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was very wrong in my son's marriage, and with our family. What I didn't realize was just how calculated the distance had been, or how dark Melanie's intentions truly were. I was about to discover that the polite rebuffs and canceled plans were just the beginning of a systematic campaign to isolate my son and position herself to take everything I had built. The first major shift in Patrick and Melanie's behavior came after they'd been married about a year. Patrick received a significant promotion at his technology company, moving up to director of marketing. I was so proud when he called to share the news, his voice animated in a way I hadn't heard in months. "That's wonderful, honey," I exclaimed. "We should celebrate. Why don't you and Melanie come over this weekend? I'll make your favorites." There was a pause on the line, then his voice noticeably cooler. "Actually, Melanie's already planning a dinner party at our place to celebrate, with some important colleagues and friends." "Oh," I tried to hide my disappointment. "Well, that sounds nice too. What time should I come?" Another pause. "It's really more of a professional networking event, Mom. I don't think you'd enjoy it." The exclusion stung, but I swallowed my hurt. "I understand. Maybe another time then." I later learned through town gossip that the professional networking event had included several of my own friends, including Robert from the bank, and even Margaret and Thomas. When I asked Margaret about it, she looked uncomfortable. "We didn't stay long, Phyllis," she assured me. "It was all very showy." Melanie spent most of the evening talking about their renovation plans and their upcoming trips. Patrick seemed almost like a prop. A week after the party, Melanie quit her job at the spa. When I asked Patrick about it during one of our increasingly rare phone calls, he explained that she was transitioning to building her personal brand on social media. I didn't quite understand what that meant until I reluctantly created an Instagram account to follow her. Melanie's profile was filled with carefully staged photos of their home expensive meals at restaurants, designer clothes, and vacation snapshots. Many posts featured products she claimed to be partnering with or reviewing. Patrick appeared occasionally, always impeccably dressed and smiling, but somehow the smile never reached his eyes anymore. The few times I visited their home after that, Melanie was constantly staging photos, rearranging flowers, or asking Patrick to take multiple pictures of her in different poses. It seemed exhausting, and nothing like the warm, genuine life I had hoped my son would build. It was during one such visit, about 18 months after their wedding, that I accidentally overheard a conversation that chilled me to my core. I had excused myself to use the bathroom and was walking back down the hallway when I heard Melanie's voice from the partially open office door. "I know, Sasha, it's taking longer than I expected," she was saying to someone presumably on speakerphone. The old lady is tougher than she looks, but the bakery's prime real estate and that house has to be worth at least $500,000 now, especially with the historical value. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. Patrick's coming around to the idea of having her declared incompetent, Melanie continued. I've been planting seeds with everyone in town about her becoming forgetful. Once we control her assets, we can sell the bakery update and flip the house, and finally have enough capital for the lifestyle we deserve. I just have to be patient until the old bat passes or loses her marbles completely. I must have made a noise because the conversation abruptly stopped. I quickly moved to the living room, my mind racing. When Melanie emerged from the office a few minutes later, her smile was as perfect as ever, but her eyes were calculating, watching me for any sign that I'd overheard. I managed to maintain my composure through the rest of the visit, making excuses to leave early. The drive home was a blur of tears and disbelief. How could this be happening? How could Patrick be involved in such a scheme? The next day, I called Patrick directly at his office, determined to confront him about what I'd heard. He seemed distracted and irritated by my call. "Mom, I'm in the middle of something important," he said tersely. "This is important too," I insisted. "I overheard Melanie yesterday. She was talking about having me declared incompetent and selling my home and business. Patrick, what's going on?" There was a long silence before he responded, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. "I think you must have misunderstood, Mom, or maybe you're confused about what you heard. Melanie would never say something like that." "I know what I heard, Patrick. She was talking to someone named Sasha, planning to take everything I've worked for." He sighed heavily. "Mom, there's no one named Sasha in our lives. I think you might be mixing things up. Melanie's concerned about you, actually. She's noticed you seem forgetful lately. We both have." "Forgetful? That's absurd. I run a successful business, Patrick. I manage my own finances. There's nothing wrong with my memory." "Look, I have to go," he said, clearly ending the conversation. "Maybe you should see Dr. Lewis for a checkup. We can talk about this another time." I hung up, shaking with anger and hurt. My own son didn't believe me. Worse, he was gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own perceptions. Over the next few weeks, I noticed something strange happening in town. Longtime customers would ask me to repeat myself, speaking a little louder than necessary. Some would exchange worried glances when I momentarily paused to recall a detail. Mrs. Peterson, who had been ordering the same birthday cake for her husband for 15 years, carefully wrote down her order, "So you don't have to remember all the details, dear." It became clear that rumors about my mental state were circulating. One afternoon, Margaret stormed into the bakery, her face flushed with anger. "You won't believe what Diane Thompson just said to me at the post office." She fumed. "She asked if I thought you should still be running the bakery in your condition." "What condition?" I asked her. "She said everyone knows you're struggling with early onset dementia." I sank onto a stool behind the counter. "Melanie," I whispered. "She's spreading rumors about me." Margaret's eyes narrowed. That manipulative little... I knew something was off about her from the start. "What's her game?" I explained what I'd overheard, and Margaret's expression grew increasingly grave. As a retired lawyer, she immediately grasped the legal implications. "Phyllis, this is serious. If they're laying groundwork to challenge your competency, we need to protect you and your assets immediately." She squeezed my hand. "Don't worry, I won't let them do this to you." The next day, Margaret accompanied me to meet with her former colleague, a lawyer specializing in elder law. Together, we set up an irrevocable trust for the bakery and my home, with Margaret as the trustee. We updated my will and medical directives, and I underwent a full cognitive assessment with detailed documentation of my perfect mental health. "This will make it much harder for them to gain control of your assets," the lawyer assured me. "But be careful. If they're desperate enough, they might try other tactics." I also made an appointment with Robert at the bank, ostensibly to discuss some bakery expansion plans. After ensuring we wouldn't be interrupted, I confided in him about my concerns. Robert's normally jovial face turned serious. I wish I could say I'm surprised, Phyllis, but there have been some red flags. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Banking confidentiality prevents me from sharing specific details, but I can tell you that your concerns about their finances aren't unfounded. That house, their lifestyle, it's built on quicksand. What do you mean? He chose his words carefully. Let's just say they've leveraged themselves to the hilt. If Patrick really has pinned his hopes on inheriting your assets to resolve their financial situation, they may be more desperate than you realize. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of my son, my kind, honest boy, involved in something so deceitful, was almost unbearable. Had Melanie completely changed him, or had I somehow failed, as a mother, not instilling the values I thought I had? As October turned to November, Patrick and Melanie's financial situation apparently grew more precarious. They began reaching out more frequently, inviting me to dinner or offering to help at the bakery, always with some subtle probe about my retirement plans or whether I'd considered downsizing. During one such dinner at their house, Melanie broached the subject directly. Phyllis, have you ever thought about selling the bakery? It must be exhausting running it all by yourself at your age. My age? I replied mildly. I'm 63, not 93, and I love what I do. Of course you do, she said with a condescending smile. But wouldn't it be nice to relax, travel a bit? Patrick and I would be happy to help manage your affairs if you wanted to. Simplify things. Patrick nodded eagerly. We've been talking about it, Mom. You've worked so hard your whole life. Maybe it's time to let someone else take over the day-to-day stress. I met my son's gaze steadily. The bakery isn't stressful to me, Patrick. It's my joy. And as for managing my affairs, Margaret's been helping me update all my legal documents recently. Everything's in good order. The flash of alarm that crossed both their faces confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't about concern for my well-being. It was about accessing my assets. As Christmas approached, Melanie announced they would be hosting an elaborate Christmas Eve party at their home for everyone who matters in Millfield. The implied exclusivity wasn't subtle. We'd love your help with the desserts, Phyllis, Melanie said during a phone call. Everyone raves about your baking. I agreed, seeing an opportunity to spend time with Patrick. Perhaps in the holiday spirit, I could find a way to reach him to help him see what was happening. Wonderful, Melanie exclaimed. If you could drop everything off around noon on Christmas Eve, that would be perfect. Drop off? I questioned. I thought I'd stay and help serve. Oh. Her voice cooled. Well, it's really more of an evening affair. Very select. I'm not sure you'd be comfortable. The implication was clear. I wasn't invited to stay for the party where my baked goods would be served. I was good enough to provide free labor, but not good enough to be a guest. I see, I said quietly. And what about Christmas Day? Should I expect you both for dinner as usual? Actually, Melanie interjected before Patrick could speak. We're hosting a Christmas brunch for some of Patrick's colleagues who couldn't make the Christmas Eve party. Very important networking opportunity. My heart sank. This would be the first Christmas in 35 years that I wouldn't spend with my son. That night, I called Margaret, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice as I relayed the conversation. Those ungrateful, manipulative... Margaret rarely lost her composure, but her indignation on my behalf was touching. Phyllis, don't make those desserts. Don't give them another minute of your time or effort. I have to, Margaret, for Patrick. He's still my son, and I have to believe the real Patrick is still in there somewhere. Margaret sighed. You have the kindest heart of anyone I know, but promise me something. Don't let them take advantage of you anymore. It's time to show them that kindness doesn't equal weakness. I promised, though I wasn't sure what that would look like yet. What I did know was that something needed to change, and soon. The holidays were approaching rapidly, and with them a confrontation I couldn't avoid much longer. What I didn't realize was that Melanie's Christmas plans would provide the perfect opportunity for me to reclaim not just my dignity, but my son as well. December arrived with a heavy snowfall that blanketed Millfield in pristine white. Main Street looked like a scene from a Christmas card, with twinkling lights and festive decorations adorning every storefront. At Sweet Memories Bakery, I was busier than ever with holiday orders. Everything from corporate gift baskets to special Christmas cookies for family celebrations. The work was a welcome distraction from my troubled thoughts about Patrick and Melanie. I threw myself into creating the most beautiful, delicious holiday treats as if perfect pastry could somehow heal the growing rift in my family. 2 weeks before Christmas, during a rare, quiet moment in the bakery, my old friend David Porter stopped by. David had been our town's only private investigator for 30 years before retiring and still kept his license active for friends in need, as he put it. "Phyllis?" He greeted me with a warm hug. "Those cinnamon rolls smell like heaven itself." I smiled, placing one on a plate for him along with a cup of coffee. "On the house for my favorite detective." David took a seat at the counter, his expression growing serious. "Margaret called me. Told me what's been happening with Patrick and that daughter-in-law of yours." My smile faltered. "Margaret shouldn't worry you with my problems." "Nonsense. John would haunt me if I didn't look out for you." He took a bite of the cinnamon roll, closing his eyes briefly in appreciation before continuing. "I've done some digging into your Melanie. Thought you might want to know what I found." My heart raced. "Tell me." David pulled a folder from his coat. "Melanie Robinson, or should I say Melanie Chambers, or Melanie Davies, or Melanie Franklin. She's changed her name more often than most people change their hairstyle." He showed me documentation of name changes along with newspaper clippings and printed social media posts. "She has a pattern," David continued. "Finds successful men, or those with family money, gets married, then either divorces them for substantial settlements or in one case stayed married until the gentleman passed away, leaving her a sizable inheritance." "She's been married before," I gasped. "Patrick has no idea." David nodded grimly. 3 times. All marriages conveniently erased from her history when she arrived in Millfield. And here's the kicker. She didn't happen to stop by your bakery that day. She researched you, researched Patrick, found out about your successful business, your historic home, John's family legacy. You were targeted, Phyllis. I felt physically ill. How could she have known all that? Social media town records obituaries. John's death announcement mentioned the family bakery and the historic Armstrong home. Patrick's LinkedIn profile showed his successful career trajectory. To someone like Melanie, that spelled opportunity. The pieces fell into place. Her convenient appearance, her rapid insinuation into Patrick's life, the whirlwind romance and marriage, the systematic isolation that followed. None of it was coincidental. "Does she have family?" I asked, remembering how no relatives had attended the wedding. "She always said they were estranged." David shook his head. "The only consistent person in her history is a friend named Sasha Dumont. They appear to have worked together on multiple projects, let's call them." "Sasha?" I whispered, recalling the name from the conversation I'd overheard. "David, what do I do with this information? If I tell Patrick, he'll never believe me. He'll think I'm trying to sabotage his marriage out of jealousy or spite." "That's where timing comes in," David said, finishing his coffee. "You need irrefutable evidence presented in a way he can't deny, and you need witnesses he respects. From what Margaret tells me, this Christmas party they're planning might provide the perfect opportunity." Over the next week, David, Margaret, and I formulated a plan. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth and protecting both my assets and my son. Robert from the bank joined our planning sessions, providing additional insights into Patrick and Melanie's precarious financial situation. They've remortgaged the house twice in 18 months, Robert confirmed. Credit card debt is substantial. They're putting on a show of wealth they can't sustain, which makes them even more desperate to get control of my assets, I concluded. The final piece fell into place when Margaret's daughter Hannah, a reporter for the regional newspaper, discovered that Melanie had consulted with a lawyer specializing in conservatorship cases, the legal mechanism by which someone could be declared incompetent and have their affairs managed by others. She met with him 3 times in the past month, Hannah reported. My source in the office says they discussed psychiatric evaluations and how to document patterns of concerning behavior in an elderly parent. The betrayal cut deep. My own son was participating in a scheme to have me declared incompetent, to strip me of my autonomy and take everything I'd worked for. As Christmas Eve approached, I prepared the desserts Melanie had requested for their party: elegant Yule logs, Christmas cookies, and a show-stopping gingerbread display of their house. Each item was crafted with the same care and attention I always gave my work, despite my knowledge of their plans. The morning of Christmas Eve, I received a text from Patrick. "Mom, can you come at 2 p.m. instead of noon? Melanie has a hair appointment." I replied that I would, though the last-minute change was inconvenient given my own Christmas preparations. What Patrick didn't know was that the timing actually worked better for our plan. At home, I carefully wrapped the gifts I had purchased for Patrick: a handcrafted leather portfolio engraved with his initials, a first-edition copy of his favorite childhood book, and a framed photo of him and John on a fishing trip they had loved. For Melanie, I had selected an elegant cashmere scarf. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to arrive empty-handed. I loaded my car with the desserts and gifts, checking one last time that the small digital recorder David had provided was working properly in my purse. Margaret's voice came through my phone. "Everything's set on our end. Robert has spoken with everyone. They'll be ready." As I drove through the snowy streets of Millfield toward Patrick and Melanie's house, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Whatever happened today would change our family forever, but the truth needed to come to light. Their house was elaborately decorated for Christmas, professional lighting outlining every architectural feature, an enormous wreath on the door, and through the windows I could see a 12-foot tree dripping with coordinated ornaments. It looked like a magazine spread, beautiful but somehow soulless compared to the mismatched, memory-laden decorations that had always adorned our family home. I parked in the driveway, gathering the first load of desserts before making my way to the front door. Before I could ring the bell, the door swung open to reveal Melanie, her hair and makeup flawless, wearing a designer red dress that probably cost more than a month's revenue from my bakery. "Phyllis," she greeted me with her practiced smile. "Right on time. Let me help you with those." She took a single lightweight box, leaving me to manage the heavier items, and led me to the kitchen. The house was immaculate, staged for the evening's event, with expensive flower arrangements and catering equipment already set up. "Everything looks lovely," I said sincerely. "You've gone to a lot of effort." "Only the best for our special guests," Melanie replied, her emphasis on special, not lost on me. "The mayor will be here, and the president of Patrick's company, plus several potential clients. This party could really elevate Patrick's position." I nodded, arranging the desserts on the designated table. "Where is Patrick?" "On a conference call upstairs, last-minute work thing." She waved dismissively. "He's been under so much pressure lately. This house, our lifestyle. It all comes at a cost." "Yes, I imagine it does," I said, looking directly at her. "Financial pressures can be very difficult on a marriage." A flicker of something, surprise or wariness, crossed her face before she composed herself. "We manage just fine. Patrick's career is really taking off." "That's wonderful to hear. I was concerned when Robert mentioned you'd had to remortgage the house. Twice." Melanie's perfect smile faltered. "Robert should learn to keep confidential information confidential. Besides, it's just temporary cash flow management. Once we consolidate some family assets, everything will be perfectly fine. The implication hung in the air between us. Family assets. Mine. I was about to respond when Patrick entered the kitchen, his expression tight with stress until he saw me. "Mom," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Thanks for doing all this. The desserts look amazing." "Anything for you, honey?" I said, meaning it despite everything. "I brought your Christmas gifts too, since I won't see you tomorrow." A flash of guilt crossed his face. "About that, I'm sorry. It's just this work thing, and Melanie already invited everyone." "It's fine," I assured him, though it wasn't. "We can celebrate another day." Melanie cleared her throat. "Patrick, shouldn't you be checking on the wine delivery? It was supposed to be here by now." Patrick nodded, giving me an apologetic look before disappearing to make a phone call. Melanie immediately dropped her pleasant demeanor. "Let's be clear," she said in a low voice. "Once you finish setting up the desserts, you need to leave. This is an important night for us, and frankly, you'd be out of place among our guests." The recorder in my purse was capturing every word, but I maintained my composed exterior. "I understand. I wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of the mayor." She seemed surprised by my easy acquiescence. "Good. And one more thing. Patrick and I have been talking. After the holidays, we think it's time to discuss transitioning the bakery to new management. Your episodes are becoming noticeable to customers." "Episodes," I echoed, encouraging her to incriminate herself further. "The forgetfulness, the confusion. Several people have mentioned their concerns to us. As your family, we have a responsibility to step in before you hurt yourself or the business's reputation." Her voice dripped with false concern. "We've already spoken to a lawyer about conservatorship options. It's really for your own good, Phyllis." There it was, the confirmation of everything David and Margaret had discovered. I took a deep breath, ready to confront her when Patrick returned to the kitchen. "Wine crisis averted," he announced, then noticed the tension between us. "Is everything okay?" "Perfect," Melanie said smoothly. "I was just telling your mother how concerned we've been about her memory issues and that we're looking into ways to help." Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "Melanie, we agreed to wait until after the holidays to bring that up." "It seemed like the right moment," she shrugged. "Better to be honest." I looked at my son, searching for any sign of the young man who had once valued truth and integrity above all else. "Patrick, do you really believe I'm experiencing memory problems?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "There have been incidents, Mom. The missed appointments, the repeated stories, the confusion about dates. We're worried about you." "Incidents that Melanie reported to you, but that you never witnessed yourself," I pointed out. "Isn't that right?" "Melanie wouldn't lie about something like that," he defended, but I could hear the first note of uncertainty in his voice. "Wouldn't she? Just like she wouldn't lie about her past, about her previous marriages?" Melanie's face hardened. "What are you talking about?" I pulled David's folder from my purse. "Your history, Melanie. Or should I call you by one of your other names, Melanie Chambers, Davies Franklin?" Patrick stared between us, confusion evident. "Mom, what is this?" "The truth about your wife. She's been married 3 times before you, Patrick. Each time to successful men whose assets she attempted to control. She targeted you, researched our family, and engineered your chance meeting at my bakery." "That's ridiculous!" Melanie scoffed, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Patrick, your mother has clearly lost touch with reality. This is exactly why we need to move forward with the conservatorship." I handed the folder to Patrick. "See for yourself. Marriage certificates, divorce decrees, news articles about the substantial settlement she received, and documentation of her meetings with a conservatorship lawyer to discuss having me declared incompetent." Patrick took the folder with trembling hands, flipping through the contents. His face paled as he examined the evidence. This can't be real, he whispered. Every document is authenticated, I assured him. David Porter conducted the investigation. David Porter, you had me investigated. Melanie's voice rose, her perfect facade cracking. Not you, your past, the past you concealed from my son. Patrick looked up from the documents, his expression stricken. Melanie, is this true? Have you been married before? Her strategy shifted instantly, tears filling her eyes. I was young, Patrick. Made mistakes. Married the wrong men who treated me terribly. I was ashamed to tell you. I wanted a fresh start with someone good and kind, like you. And the conservatorship, he pressed. Were you planning to have my mother declared incompetent to gain control of her assets? Of course not, she insisted, though less convincingly. I was exploring options to help her in her declining years, for her protection. Patrick turned to me, his expression torn. Mom, I don't know what to believe. This was the crucial moment. I had planned to show him the recording to present all the evidence at once, but looking at my son's confused, pained face, I knew a different approach was needed. Patrick, do you remember what your father always told you about truth? He nodded slowly. That it stands on its own. That lies need constant support, but truth can stand alone. Yes, the truth about me is that I'm healthy, competent, and fully capable of managing my own life and business. You know that in your heart. You've known me your entire life. She's manipulating you, Melanie interjected desperately. This is what she does. Tries to come between us because she can't stand that you have your own life now. Patrick closed the folder, his jaw tight. I need time to process this. All of it. We don't have time, Melanie insisted. Guests will be arriving in a few hours. I'll finish setting up the desserts and go, I said quietly, turning back to my work. You both have a lot to discuss. As I arranged the final pastries, I could hear them arguing in hushed tones in the living room. The facade was cracking, but I couldn't be sure if Patrick was ready to see the full truth yet. Some manipulations run too deep, become too entangled with one's own sense of reality. I gathered my empty containers and purse, heading for the door. Patrick intercepted me in the foyer. Mom, wait, he said, his voice strained. I don't want to leave things like this. Not on Christmas Eve. I touched his cheek gently. I'll always be here for you, Patrick. When you're ready to talk, really talk, you know where to find me. As I reached for the door handle, Melanie appeared behind him, her composure restored, but anger simmering beneath the surface. Phyllis, before you go, she said coolly, I think we should be clear about tomorrow as well. We won't be needing you to drop by with gifts or food or anything else. In fact, I think it's best if we take a break from family visits for a while. Until you're feeling better. Patrick looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict her. That silence hurt more than any words could have. I nodded, my hand still on the door. I understand. No, I don't think you do, Melanie continued, emboldened by Patrick's silence. Patrick and I are building a life together, a future. We don't need the constant burden of your expectations and outdated traditions holding us back. Patrick finally spoke up, though weakly. Melanie, that's not necessary. No, it is necessary, she insisted. Your mother needs to understand that things have changed. We've moved on from the small-town, small-minded life she represents. I looked at my son, searching for any sign of the man I'd raised. Is that how you feel too, Patrick? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Things need to change, Mom. The constant checking and the expectations every holiday. Maybe some space would be good for all of us. My heart broke, but I refused to show it. I see. I opened the door to leave, but Patrick suddenly moved to block it, his expression hardening. Mom, wait. The folder. I need to keep that. Of course, I said, confused by his sudden intensity. It's for you. No, I mean, Melanie thinks it's best if we destroy it. Put this whole unpleasantness behind us. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there wasn't my son anymore. It was a stranger manipulated beyond recognition. Melanie stepped forward, placing a possessive hand on Patrick's arm. What Patrick is trying to say is that you are no longer welcome here, Phyllis. Not today, not tomorrow, not for the foreseeable future. You've upset him with these ridiculous accusations, these obvious forgeries meant to drive us apart. Patrick nodded, though something in his expression seemed pained. I think it's best if you go, Mom. And don't come back until you're ready to apologize to Melanie and respect our marriage. Patrick, I whispered, shocked at the completeness of Melanie's control over him. He shook his head, physically blocking the doorway. No, Mom, it's done. You are not our family anymore. Go away. Behind him, Melanie's lips curled into a triumphant smirk, her eyes gleaming with victory. I simply nodded, turned around, and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, still standing in the doorway. Patrick looking lost, Melanie radiating satisfaction. Once I was around the corner, I pulled over my hands, shaking, as I reached for my phone. I dialed a familiar number. Margaret, I said, when she answered, my voice steadier than I expected. It's time. Call everyone. 5 minutes. That's how long it took for the first car to turn onto Patrick and Melanie Street after my call to Margaret. Robert Jenkins's sleek black Mercedes pulled up beside my car, where I had parked just around the corner from their house. Are you okay, Phyllis? He asked as he rolled down his window, concern etched on his kind face. I nodded, surprised to find it was true. Despite the pain of Patrick's rejection, I felt oddly calm. I'm fine, Robert. Just sad that it had to come to this. We're all here for you, he assured me. Everyone's on their way. More cars began arriving. Margaret and Thomas in their practical sedan, Pastor Green from our community church, David Porter, Hannah from the newspaper, and one by one, all the prominent business owners and community leaders who had been invited to Patrick and Melanie's exclusive Christmas Eve party. Instead of proceeding to the house, they all parked near me, gathering in a small impromptu meeting on the snow-dusted sidewalk. Is everyone clear on what's happening? Margaret asked, ever the organized one. When heads nodded, she turned to me. Phyllis, are you sure you want to go through with this? It's not too late to change the plan. I took a deep breath, looking down the street at the house where my son now lived, as almost a prisoner to his wife's manipulations. I'm sure. This isn't about revenge. It's about breaking through to Patrick before it's too late. Pastor Green placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Sometimes, true love means difficult confrontations. You're doing the right thing, Phyllis. With that assurance, we all returned to our cars and formed a small procession down the street, pulling into Patrick and Melanie's driveway and the spaces in front of their house. I led the way to the front door, the same door that had been closed to me just minutes earlier. I rang the bell, hearing the melodious chime echo through the house. After a moment, the door opened to reveal Melanie still in her perfect red dress. Her expression shifting from anticipatory welcome to confusion to alarm as she registered who stood before her. What is this? She demanded, her eyes darting past me to the group assembled on her doorstep. Your guests have arrived, I said simply, for the Christmas Eve party. Patrick appeared behind her, his face paling as he saw the gathering. Mom, what's going on? A change of venue, Robert spoke up, stepping forward. Phyllis has invited us all to her home for a true Millfield Christmas celebration. But our party, Melanie stammered, her perfect composure cracking. We'll have to proceed without guests, I'm afraid. Margaret added coolly. We've all decided we'd prefer to spend the evening with Phyllis. Patrick stared at the assembled group, his boss from the bank community leaders, everyone who had RSVP'd to their party, all now standing in solidarity with me. I don't understand, he said, looking bewildered. It's quite simple, son, Pastor Green explained gently. Your mother shared with us her concerns about your situation, and separately, many of us have noticed troubling changes in you over the past few years. Changes, Patrick echoed. You've become isolated from the community that raised you, Robert said, from people who care about you, and there have been financial decisions that have raised concerns. My financial decisions are none of your business, Patrick retorted, a flash of anger breaking through his confusion. They are when you've been attempting to secure loans using your mother's property as collateral without her knowledge, Robert countered. That's not just unethical, Patrick. It's illegal. Patrick's head whipped toward Melanie. What is he talking about? Melanie's face hardened. He's lying. They're all lying to try to turn you against me, just like your mother. Am I lying about the loan application with a forged signature that came across my desk last month? Robert challenged. Or perhaps about the inquiries to 3 different banks about refinancing a property on Maple Drive, your mother's address, that you don't own? Patrick's face drained of color. I didn't. No, you didn't, I said softly. But Melanie did, using personal information you had access to. Melanie's pleasant mask disappeared completely. This is ridiculous. Patrick, don't listen to them. They're trying to destroy everything we've built. Built on what, Melanie? Hannah, the reporter, spoke up. Debt lies. I've seen the documents about your past. 3 previous marriages, 3 divorces, each leaving you with substantial settlements. Is Patrick just number 4 in your scheme? Patrick looked physically ill now. Is it true? He asked Melanie directly. Have you been trying to take out loans against my mother's property? Of course not, she scoffed, but her eyes darted nervously. These people are conspiring against us because they're jealous. They can't stand to see us succeed to rise above this provincial little town. That's not true, Patrick, David Porter said, stepping forward with a folder identical to the one I had shown earlier. Everything your mother told you is documented here. Melanie's previous identities, marriages, financial schemes, and yes, the attempted fraudulent loan applications. Patrick took the folder with trembling hands. I need to look at this. There's no time, Melanie insisted, trying to grab the folder. Our guests will be arriving any minute. Your guests are already here, Margaret pointed out, and they've made their choice about where they'll be celebrating Christmas Eve. Melanie's composure shattered completely. Fine, go to her pathetic little house with its homemade decorations and sentimental garbage. Have your small-town Christmas with these nobodies. Patrick and I don't need any of you. Her voice had risen to a shrill pitch, her perfect facade replaced by ugly anger. Patrick stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Melanie, he said quietly. These are my friends, my community, people I've known my entire life. And what have they ever done for you? She demanded. I'm the one who pushed you to aim higher, to want more, to escape this suffocating little pond. You pushed me to cut ties with everyone who cared about me, Patrick realized aloud. To distance myself from my mother, to take on debt we couldn't afford to try to take control of my mother's assets by having her declared incompetent. Melanie's eyes narrowed. Don't be dramatic. Everything I did was for us, for our future. No. Patrick shook his head slowly. It was for you. It's always been for you. He turned to me, his expression devastated. Mom, I don't know what to say. What she had me believing about you. What I almost did. I stepped forward and took his hands in mine. You don't have to say anything right now. Just come with us. Come home for Christmas. He's not going anywhere. Melanie grabbed Patrick's arm possessively. This is his home. With me, his wife. Pastor Green spoke up again, his voice gentle but firm. Patrick, sometimes the hardest thing to do is admit we've been deceived. There's no shame in it. What matters is what you choose to do now. Patrick looked from Melanie's angry face to the supportive community gathered on his doorstep, then down at the folder in his hands containing evidence of his wife's deceptions. I need time, he said finally, to think, to process all of this. Of course you do, I assured him. Whatever you decide, Patrick, know that I love you. I always have, and I always will. His eyes filled with tears. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. Patrick, if you walk out that door with them, don't bother coming back. Melanie threatened, her voice cold. He looked at her for a long moment. Is that really the choice you want to give me, after everything that's just been revealed? She didn't answer, her silence damning. I thought so, Patrick said, his voice stronger now. I'll get my coat. You can't be serious, Melanie sputtered. You're choosing them over me after everything I've done for you. That's just it, Melanie, Patrick replied as he pulled on his winter coat. I'm finally seeing clearly what you've done. To me, to my relationship with my mother, to my connections with this community. None of it was for me. It was all for you. He turned to address the group on the doorstep. I'd like to come to Mom's if that's okay with everyone. I think I need to come home. A murmur of approval ran through the gathered friends and neighbors. Melanie watched in furious disbelief as Patrick stepped outside to join us. You'll regret this, she called after him. All of you will. But her threats fell on deaf ears as our impromptu procession made its way back to our vehicles. Patrick rode with me, sitting quietly in the passenger seat as we drove through the snowy streets toward the house where he had grown up. I don't know how you can ever forgive me, he finally said as we turned onto Maple Drive. The things I said to you, the way I treated you. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at it, I replied. I'm just grateful we uncovered the truth before it went any further. The house came into view, warm lights glowing in every window, a wreath on the door that I had made from pine branches from our own yard. It wasn't as elaborate as Melanie's professional decorations, but it was genuine, created with love. It looks the same, Patrick observed, a catch in his voice. Like I never left. Some things change, I said, parking in the driveway. But the important things, love, family, community, those remain constant. As we entered the house, followed by our friends and neighbors, Patrick paused in the foyer, taking in the familiar sights and smells. The Christmas tree in the corner, decorated with 30 years' worth of ornaments each, with its own story. The stockings hanging by the fireplace, including his, which I had continued to hang every year in his absence. You still put up my stocking, he noted, his voice thick with emotion. Every year, I confirmed. Because no matter what, you're always my son, and this is always your home. The evening that followed was everything a Christmas Eve should be. While I hadn't planned to host a party, the bakery had provided plenty of desserts and everyone pitched in. Margaret organizing a potluck by phone, Robert picking up additional beverages, Pastor Green leading us in carols around the piano that had sat silent for too long. Patrick moved through the gathering like someone waking from a long dream, reconnecting with old friends, apologizing for his absence, gradually relaxing into the warmth of community he had been missing. Late in the evening, as guests began departing with plans to reconvene the next day for Christmas dinner, Patrick and I finally had a moment alone in the kitchen. "I found these in my coat pocket," he said, placing a set of keys on the counter. "They're yours, to the bakery. Melanie had copies made. She was planning to access it when you weren't there to look for financial documents." I picked up the keys, feeling a chill at how close they had come to succeeding in their plans. "Thank you for telling me." "There's more," he admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "The conservatorship proceedings. They had already been initiated. Papers were filed last week with signed statements from Melanie's friends claiming they had witnessed your concerning behavior." "I know," I said gently. "Margaret found out from a clerk at the courthouse. That's why we had to act quickly." Patrick finally looked up, his eyes haunted. "How can you be so calm? I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I almost destroyed everything you've built." "Because you're my son," I said simply. "And because I know the real Patrick, the one your father and I raised, would never have done these things if he hadn't been manipulated and deceived." "I let myself be deceived," he countered. "Because I liked the fantasy she was selling. The big house, the status, the idea that we were somehow better than," he gestured around him, "than this life, than the values you and Dad taught me." "We all get lost sometimes," I said, squeezing his hand. "What matters is finding your way back." He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "I want to. I need to make things right." "We'll figure it out together," I promised. "One day at a time." As the last guests departed with promises to return the next day, Patrick stood on the porch, watching the snow gently falling in the glow of the Christmas lights. "What happens now?" he asked as I joined him. "With Melanie, the house, everything, that's up to you," I told him. "But you don't have to face it alone. You have me and an entire community that cares about you." He took a deep breath of the cold winter air. "For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe again, like I've been underwater and finally reached the surface." We stood together in comfortable silence, watching the snow transform our little town into a winter wonderland. Patrick might have a difficult road ahead, untangling himself from Melanie's web of lies and financial manipulations. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, we had taken the first step toward healing. Inside the house that had sheltered generations of our family, the Christmas tree lights twinkled, illuminating ornaments that held decades of memories. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new beginnings. For tonight, it was enough that my son had found his way home. 6 months after that fateful Christmas Eve, Millfield experienced one of its most beautiful summers in memory. Lush greenery covered the hills surrounding our town, and flower boxes overflowed with colorful blooms on Main Street. From my vantage point at the window table in Sweet Memories Bakery, I could see the entire bustling street alive with both locals and summer tourists. "More coffee, Mom?" Patrick asked, appearing at my side with a fresh pot. I smiled up at him, still sometimes surprised to see him here in the bakery, now an integral part of the business. "Yes, please. Any word from Margaret this morning?" Patrick filled my cup, his expression shifting to one of satisfaction. "She called while you were in the back. The judge granted the final divorce decree yesterday. It's officially over." A weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying lifted from my shoulders. The past 6 months had been a challenging journey of legal proceedings, financial untangling, and emotional healing for Patrick. Melanie had not gone quietly fighting the divorce with every manipulative tactic at her disposal. "How are you feeling about it?" I asked him. He sat down across from me, considering the question. "Relieved mostly. Embarrassed still when I think about how completely I fell for her scheme. But also, free." Patrick had moved into the small apartment above the bakery, initially needing space from the house he had shared with Melanie while legal proceedings determined its fate. The property had ultimately been sold to pay off the substantial debts Melanie had accumulated in their joint names, with Patrick receiving a modest portion of the proceeds to start fresh. "You have nothing to be embarrassed about," I assured him. "Melanie was practiced at what she did. You weren't her first victim, remember?" "No, but I was determined to be her last," he said with quiet intensity. Hannah's article made sure of that. Hannah's investigative piece about Melanie's history of marriages and financial manipulations had run in the regional paper 3 months ago, effectively ending Melanie's ability to operate in our part of the country. Last we heard, she had moved to Florida, presumably to find new targets. "Have you decided what you'll do about the job offer in Portland?" I asked, changing the subject to happier matters. Patrick had recently received an offer to return to marketing with a company that had been impressed by the rebranding campaign he'd designed for Sweet Memories Bakery. Our little shop had expanded its online presence, significantly shipping our most popular items nationwide and developing a substantial social media following based on authentic content rather than Melanie's artificial lifestyle posts. "I'm going to turn it down," he said, surprising me. "If that's okay with you?" "Of course it's okay, but why? It's a good opportunity." Patrick glanced around the bakery, taking in the morning regulars enjoying their coffee, the display cases filled with pastries, the warm atmosphere we had cultivated together. "Because I'm happy here. For the first time in years, I'm doing work that feels meaningful." Over the past months, Patrick had discovered an unexpected talent for baking, adding his own creative twists to my traditional recipes. He had also taken over much of the business management, implementing modern systems that had streamlined our operations and increased profitability. "Besides," he continued, "we're breaking ground on the expansion next week. Someone needs to oversee that project." The expansion had been Robert's idea initially, converting the vacant storefront next door into additional seating and a space for baking classes and community events. What had once seemed like an impossible dream was now becoming reality, funded in part by a small business grant Patrick had secured through his research and planning. "Your father would be so proud of you," I said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "Not just for the business success, but for finding your way back to what really matters." Patrick's eyes glistened briefly. "I think about him a lot lately. Wonder what advice he would have given me about Melanie if he'd been here." "He would have respected your choices," I said truthfully. "But he also would have asked the tough questions that might have helped you see the situation more clearly sooner." The bell above the door jingled as Margaret entered, her face alight with triumph. "It's official," she announced, brandishing legal documents. "Signed, sealed, and delivered. Patrick is a free man." Patrick stood to hug her, gratitude evident in every line of his body. Without Margaret's legal expertise navigating the complicated divorce proceedings, Melanie might have succeeded in taking much more than she ultimately did. "Not just free," Patrick corrected with a smile. "Wiser, and very, very grateful to have friends like you." "That calls for celebration," I decided, retrieving a bottle of champagne we had been saving for this occasion. "Robert and Pastor Green should be here any minute for our meeting about the community fund. We can make it a double celebration." The community fund had been another positive development from the Christmas Eve confrontation. Inspired by how the town had rallied around our family, Pastor Green had proposed establishing a fund to help community members facing hardship or crisis. With Robert's financial guidance and initial seed money from several local businesses, including Sweet Memories Bakery, the fund had already assisted 3 families through difficult times. As if on cue, Robert and Pastor Green arrived together, immediately sensing the celebratory atmosphere. "Good news, I take it?" Robert asked, his eyes twinkling. "The best?" Margaret confirmed, holding up the divorce decree. "Patrick is officially Melanie-free." Congratulations and handshakes followed as I poured champagne into the special occasion glasses we kept for moments like this. "A toast," Pastor Green proposed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings, to healing, and to the power of community." "And to family," Patrick added, meeting my eyes with a warmth that filled my heart. Not just the one we're born into, but the one we choose and the one that chooses us. We clinked glasses, the simple joy of the moment washing away the last shadows of the painful chapter we had endured. Later that afternoon, as Patrick and I closed the bakery together, he paused while wiping down the counters. "I've been thinking about Christmas this year." "In July." I laughed. "I know it's early." He grinned sheepishly. "But after last year, I want to make sure this one is special. I want to revive all our old traditions. The tree cutting at Peterson's farm, the whole day of baking cookies, even the matching pajamas you used to make us wear for photos." My heart swelled at his enthusiasm for the simple family traditions that Melanie had derided as provincial and sentimental garbage. "That sounds wonderful," I said, though I'm not sure I can still sew matching pajamas. "Actually," Patrick said, a hint of mischief in his eyes, "I've been taking sewing classes at the community center. I thought maybe I could make them this year." I stared at him in delighted surprise. "You've been learning to sew, you?" He shrugged, looking both embarrassed and pleased with himself. "Dad always said there was value in creating things with your own hands." I'm finding he was right about that, like he was about so many things. We locked up the bakery and walked home together through the summer evening, the sidewalk still bustling with activity as Millfield enjoyed its seasonal visitors. Several people called out greetings as we passed, a reminder of the strong community connections that had sustained us through difficult times. At home, we sat on the porch swing that John had built decades ago, watching fireflies begin to appear in the gathering dusk. The evening had that perfect summer stillness, warm but not hot, with the scent of nearby gardens heavy in the air. "I've been thinking," Patrick said after a comfortable silence, "about what you did at Christmas, standing up to Melanie and me, gathering the community, refusing to be isolated or manipulated any longer." I waited, curious where his thoughts were leading. "It was the bravest thing I've ever seen," he continued. "To be faced with rejection from your only child, to be told you weren't family anymore, and instead of crumbling, you fought back with truth and dignity." "I had help," I reminded him. "Margaret, David, Robert, all our friends." "Yes, but you had to take that first step. Make that call from your car after we shut the door in your face." He turned to look at me directly. "I need you to know how sorry I am for that moment, for being the person who could do that to you." "Patrick, we've been through this. You were under Melanie's influence." He shook his head firmly. "That explains it, but doesn't excuse it. I made choices, but what I'm trying to say is, watching you stand up that day, seeing your strength, it changed something in me, showed me what real courage looks like." I was touched by his words, by the thoughtful man he had become through this painful journey. "Sometimes, the hardest doors to break down are the ones we build ourselves," I said. "Fear, doubt, the need to please others at our own expense." "Exactly," Patrick agreed. "When that door closed in your face, literally and figuratively, you didn't accept it as the end. You found another way forward." We rocked gently on the swing as twilight deepened around us, comfortable in the knowledge that while our family had been tested severely, it had emerged stronger. Not just the two of us, but our extended family of friends and community members who had stood with us when it mattered most. Sometimes, the most painful rejection leads to the most beautiful reconnection. A door closed on Christmas Day had ultimately opened a pathway to healing growth and deeper appreciation for the true meaning of family. As darkness fell completely, we moved inside to the home that had sheltered generations of our family, its walls holding decades of memories, both painful and joyful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but we would face them together with the wisdom and strength that only comes from weathering life's most difficult storms. Have you ever had to stand up against manipulation or lies from someone you loved? How did you find the courage to draw that boundary? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this tale of family betrayal and redemption resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their family struggles. Thank you for walking this journey with me today. And remember that sometimes the doors that close most painfully in our lives are the very ones that lead us to our greatest freedom and strength. I'm grateful for each one of you,